All right, House Democrats are gearing up for the first of a series of witnesses in their impeachment inquiry. According to a CBS News poll, 53% of Americans approve of the inquiry, while 46% disapprove.
The poll was largely split along party lines. 63% in the poll say the Trump administration should cooperate with the inquiry, something that the White House is currently refusing to do. Nancy Cordes reports.
No one has asserted that I have done anything wrong except a lying president.
Speaking to reporters in Iowa, former Vice President Biden praised his son's decision, announced Sunday not to serve on boards of or work on behalf of foreign-owned companies if his father is elected.
No one in my family will have an office in the White House, will sit in meetings as if they're a cabinet member, will in fact have any business relationship with anyone that relates to a foreign corporation or a foreign country, period.
It was Hunter Biden's work for a Ukrainian energy company that President Trump and his allies were pressuring Ukraine to investigate, even though there was no evidence of wrongdoing. CBS News has learned that the president's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, is now being scrutinized by federal investigators for his relationship with two men with ties to Ukraine who were arrested last week.
You know, other countries are looking at us like, what the hell is going on in the United States? Seriously.
Over the weekend, President Trump admitted Giuliani may be rough around the edges, but had lunch with him in a show of solidarity, even as Trump aides made it clear Giuliani would no longer be handling Ukraine-related business. This week, House committees are expected to hear testimony from U.S. Ambassador to the European Union, Gordon Sondland, who, in a text message to another diplomat in September, insisted there was no quid pro quo involving millions in withheld U.S. security aid to Ukraine. According to the Washington Post, Sondland will tell Congress he wrote that text message after calling the president and has no knowledge of whether the president was telling him the truth at that moment.
All right, so more on this. For more on this, we want to bring in CBS News chief congressional correspondent Nancy Cordes and CBS News White House correspondent Ben Tracy. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. So, Nancy, we're going to start with you. Explain to our reviewers what ties Hill has to the Ukraine controversy, because she is a Russia expert.
She is, but she had broad jurisdiction over Russia, Ukraine, Europe when she was at the White House. She had a very high-ranking role at the National Security Council, though she left right before the president made that now infamous phone call to the president of Ukraine, urging him to investigate the Bidens. And she was there, however, for the run-up to that conversation, several months where, as you'll recall, the U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, who testified last week, had been recalled. She had somehow angered the president, and then the U.S. ambassador to the EU, Gordon Sondland, kind of stepped up, and he was really pushing the president's agenda in Ukraine, urging the Ukrainians to investigate the company that Hunter Biden worked for, urging Ukraine to investigate the president's theories about the origins of meddling in the 2016 U.S. elections. And so what we expect that Fiona Hill, who you see there arriving this morning, is going to say behind closed doors today is that both Sondland and Giuliani went around her to do this. They went outside the usual channels at the NSC to bring the president's message directly to Ukrainian leaders. Hill is someone who's very well respected in the foreign policy arena, not someone who is seen as a Trump loyalist, which is why the White House has been somewhat nervous about what she would say.
Ben, over to you now. Democrats are now backing off their plan to have the original whistleblower testify over safety concerns. The president's been tweeting about that this morning. At one point in his tweet, he says the whistleblower got so many things wrong about the phone call that he had with the Ukrainian president. But in fact, the whistleblower complaint, in fact, lines up with the so-called transcript that the White House released.
Exactly. You know, so far the president's defense in all of this has been really to attack this whistleblower, to attack their credibility, to attack what they've said. The president contends that his call was perfect. That's the word that he keeps using over and over again. And in that tweet this morning, you really saw the president upset by the fact that he might not get to know who this whistleblower is. The president also in the tweet, which is fairly extraordinary, said, "We must know the identity of this whistleblower to determine what happened to the USA." So the president really does want to know who this person is. He has intimated that this person might be a spy or was being fed information by spies. So this is something the president's very preoccupied with. But his defense so far has really been to go after the whistleblower and not so much the substance of the complaint.
Can I just point out, Emery, before your question to Ben, that there are laws in the United States that specifically protect the whistleblower's identity.
Yeah,
so the president is asking, okay.
That's what a whistleblower is, right? Somebody who can come forward with some level of protection and speak what they believe to be the truth. So yeah, Ben, this is a question for you. Nancy reported that Rudy Giuliani is now under federal investigation, and it has to do with his relationship with two men who were accused of illegally funneling money into the Trump campaign. These are men who are not American, right? So this is, they're from Ukraine, I believe, right? Via Russia, I believe. Anyways, so I'm curious about how the president is responding, because, you know, at this point, really, Rudy Giuliani is one of the few people willing to very vocally defend the president on this.
Even though he's rough around the edges.
Yes, indeed.
Yes, the president did this weekend say that Rudy Giuliani is a little rough around the edges sometimes, but that he's a wonderful guy and a great lawyer. The president has kind of gone back and forth on this in the last couple of days. Late last week, it appeared the president was kind of trying to distance himself from Rudy Giuliani. He was asked here at the White House before leaving for his rally in Minnesota if Rudy Giuliani was still his lawyer, and the president said, "I don't know." That was seen as a sign that maybe he was trying to put a little distance there with his relationship. But then this weekend, we learned that the president had lunch with Rudy Giuliani at his golf club on Saturday. He tweeted very kind things about him, basically saying that now the Democrats are going after Rudy. He called him a legendary crime buster. So I think this relationship is still fairly strong, and the president is trying to make some real public shows of support for Rudy Giuliani, who has been one of his most vocal defenders. Whether or not that level of vocality has been effective is another question.
Nancy, real quickly about the actions that are happening right now in northern Syria. There's been bipartisan condemnation of the president's actions with regards to U.S. troops leaving the region. And I wonder what you're hearing from the Hill about the way forward. Are we going to see, I know that Lindsey Graham has been suggesting that there will be sanctions. So far, nothing has happened. Is this finally one point where we can see Democrats and Republicans coming together around one issue?
I think that that's very likely, and as Congress comes back over the course of this week, I think you'll hear more and more of that. One thing the Republicans have not been reluctant to push back on this president about has been foreign policy. You've seen them do it via legislation, via resolutions more than once, and it appears that they are poised to do it again. In this case, however, the cat is kind of out of the bag. There's really nothing that they can do about the U.S. troops that have already left Syria. What they can do, they say, is to impose very tough sanctions on Turkey. Graham says he's leading the charge, that he's gotten the president on board. We'll see about that. But it does appear that Republicans and Democrats alike, at the very least, would like to take a tough stand against Turkey as this military action is ongoing. And the Kurds, of course, are still at serious risk.
So, Ben, I want to ask you about another topic that we talked about earlier. This violent video that was shown at a conference of Trump supporters over the weekend. It's sort of, if you will, a meme that superimposes the president's face as well as some of his Democratic critics and
John McCain.
Right. And then
Black Lives Matter.
Media outlet images, including CBS. And it's sort of it's a shooting spree, shooting rampage inside of a church. We're not showing this video here at CBS, but many people have wondered whether or not the president was going to be responding or the White House was going to be responding. Have you heard anything?
Yeah, this is a pretty horrific video, and I'm glad we're not showing it. Just to give a little context here, this appears to be a scene from a movie in which the president's face is then superimposed on the body of the attacker. It's very violent. There's shooting, there's stabbing, there's attacking physically people in this video that are depicted as media organizations and then some of the president's political rivals. We had been waiting for a response from the White House, and we have finally gotten one just within the last couple of minutes. Press Secretary Stephanie Grisham tweeted that the president has not yet seen the video. He will see it shortly, but based upon everything he has heard, he strongly condemns this video. So far, that is the White House response. We had asked the press office here for hours this morning if they had any official response to this, and they had nothing. So the only thing we're getting from the White House so far is that the president has not seen this, but from what he has heard, he condemns it. We did hear from the president's campaign. They said they did not create this video and they do not condone it. American Priority, which is the organization that was putting on this event at the President's Golf Club in Florida where this was shown, says this was not an officially authorized video, that it was shown in some sort of side room, and they're not quite sure how it happened.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
All right. Yeah, we'll see what the president has to say about it. And thank you for that statement from Stephanie Grisham. Ben, I hadn't seen that. We appreciate it as always. Nancy, thank you as well. We'll be talking to you a little bit later.
Thank you.
So for more on how this investigation started and where it's heading, we're talking about the inquiry, you can follow along on our live blog. You can find that at cbsnews.com/impeachment.